All right. Ready to dive deep into the minds of high achievers.
Yeah,
You sent over some fascinating motivational stuff, and we're going to break it all down.
absolutely.
The key takeaways, and most importantly, what it all means for you.
Yes.
We've got this motivational video from YouTube, right?
Uh-huh.
And this awesome list of success habits.
Cool.
So, big question. Are high achievers just born that way?
Or can anyone cultivate that mindset?
Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating how often you see similar traits pop up in successful people,
Oh, totally.
even from totally different backgrounds.
Okay.
It's like there's a formula, but not like cookie cutter, you know?
Right. It's not about copying someone else's life,
Exactly.
but maybe understanding the principles.
The underlying principles.
Yeah. And speaking of formulas, the video really hammered on the importance of routine.
Yeah.
Almost like it's the secret sauce.
It's a big word.
They even talked about how researchers found this pattern across so many fields. Artists, athletes, entrepreneurs. It seems like routine is a common thread.
It does make you wonder, why would these high-energy, dynamic people need so much structure?
Right. It seems counterintuitive.
But think about it. Routines actually free up mental space.
Okay.
It's like having your brain on autopilot for those everyday tasks,
I see.
so you can focus on the bigger picture.
Less decision fatigue.
Less anxiety, more energy for the stuff that really matters.
Okay, so that makes sense, theoretically.
Right.
But what does it look like in practice?
Yeah.
The video used Arnold Schwarzenegger as an example, talking about his pre-competition routine. Same meal, same time, every single time.
Yeah.
I mean, I get prepping your body, but that seems almost obsessive.
I think the takeaway is less about mimicking Arnold's specific routine.
Okay.
It's more about finding what works for you.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that even small, consistent actions can create a foundation for success.
Gotcha.
For Arnold, it was about minimizing distractions and maximizing focus.
I've tried morning routines in the past, but I always end up hitting snooze
Yeah.
or getting sidetracked. Any advice on how to actually stick with it,
Sure.
especially when life gets crazy?
One thing that often trips people up is trying to do too much at once.
Oh, okay.
Start small. Maybe it's just 5 minutes of meditation.
Yeah.
Or reading a few pages of a book. The key is consistency, building that muscle memory.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to adjust as needed. Life throws curveballs. So your routine should be adaptable.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got this foundation of routine. But the video also stressed the importance of active learning,
Yes.
not just passively absorbing information.
All right.
They had this great line, "We remember the stuff we earn
Ooh.
more than what the teacher tells us."
That really resonated with me, too. It's about being curious,
Yeah.
going beyond the surface level, asking why instead of just accepting things at face value.
Totally.
High achievers tend to treat the world like a giant classroom, constantly looking for opportunities to learn and grow.
Yeah, and they're not just waiting for someone to hand them knowledge.
Yeah,
They're actively seeking it out.
exactly.
They're reading, they're taking courses, talking to experts, they're experimenting.
Yeah.
It's almost like they have this insatiable hunger for knowledge.
And that ties in perfectly with the growth mindset, the belief that you can always improve,
Yeah.
no matter where you're starting from. It's about seeing challenges as opportunities to learn
Okay.
and expand your skills,
Right.
rather than threats to your ego.
It's almost like they're constantly leveling up, like in a video game.
Yeah,
But instead of points, they're gaining knowledge and experience.
exactly.
So how can someone cultivate that kind of active learning mentality? I mean, the world feels pretty overwhelming sometimes.
Right.
Where do you even start?
One simple strategy is to shift your perspective from having to earning knowledge.
Okay.
What's one skill or area you're really interested in, maybe even a bit intimidated by? Instead of feeling like you need to know everything already, embrace the process of learning,
Yeah.
step by step.
All right. So we've got routine as our foundation
Okay.
and this active learning approach as our engine.
Right.
But what's the steering wheel?
What gives all this effort direction?
Exactly.
Well, both the video and that list of habits emphasize the importance of a clear vision.
Oh, okay.
Knowing where you want to go.
Yeah.
It's not just about wanting to be successful.
Right.
It's about having a specific destination in mind.
And this is where Schwarzenegger's story about seeing that documentary about America comes in, right?
Exactly.
It literally sparked his ambition.
Yeah.
Gave him this concrete image of where he wanted to be.
It's about having something tangible to work towards.
Okay.
And it's not just about daydreaming, it's about setting goals that give that vision structure.
Right.
The more specific and challenging the goals, the more motivated you'll be to achieve them.
So it's like having a roadmap, and those goals are the milestones along the way.
Exactly.
But I've always struggled with goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
I get overwhelmed, start procrastinating. Any tips on making it less daunting?
One thing that helps is to break down big, overwhelming goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay, smaller chunks.
Right.
But how do you actually stay on track?
Yeah.
Life has a way of throwing distractions at you.
Accountability can be huge.
Okay.
Find a friend, a mentor, someone who can check in on your progress
Uh-huh.
and offer support.
So we've got routine active learning
Okay.
and a clear vision with goals to guide us. But what about when things get tough?
Right.
Because let's face it, the road to success is rarely smooth sailing.
That's where resilience comes in. And both Schwarzenegger and that list of habits touched on the importance of ignoring negativity
Yeah.
and maintaining self-belief even when others doubt you.
The video actually called out the naysayers directly, and they had some pretty strong words about them.
It's easy to get discouraged when people don't believe in your vision,
Yeah.
especially people you care about. But high achievers tend to have a strong internal compass.
Okay.
They're less reliant on external validation.
I love how Schwarzenegger reframed the word impossible. He basically said whenever someone told him something couldn't be done,
Yeah,
he heard it as possible. It's like he flipped the script
totally.
and used their negativity as fuel.
It's such a powerful mindset shift. It's about choosing to focus on what you can control, your effort, your attitude, your response to those challenges.
That's so important because, honestly, we all have those naysaying voices in our lives.
Right.
Whether it's from other people or from our own self-doubt. It's about recognizing those voices and choosing which ones we listen to.
It's about cultivating that inner resilience, that ability to bounce back from setbacks
Yeah.
and keep moving forward. Because let's face it, everyone faces obstacles on the path to success. The difference is how you choose to respond to them.
Okay, so we've got routine, active learning, a clear vision with goals, and this resilient mindset.
Yeah.
But what about when you hit a wall? I mean, sometimes you have to know when to quit, right?
That's a great point, and it leads perfectly into our next topic,
Okay.
which might seem counterintuitive.
Okay.
Embracing risk and failure.
Wait, failure. Isn't that what we're trying to avoid?
Not necessarily. Remember that blunt advice from the video? Turn the key, close the blank business.
Yeah,
It's about recognizing that not every path leads to success.
right. It's about being honest with yourself about when to persist
Mm-hmm.
and when to pivot. Sometimes failure is just a sign that you need to adjust your approach.
Probably.
Or maybe even change direction entirely. I mean, think about Thomas Edison. He tested over 10,000 filaments before finding one that worked for the light bulb.
And he famously said, I haven't failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That's
Wow.
reframing failure as feedback.
So instead of seeing failure as a full stop, it's like a detour,
Right.
a chance to learn and course correct.
Exactly. It's about seeing those so-called failures as valuable experiments,
Yeah.
as stepping stones on the path to success.
That makes sense.
Mm.
But how do you know when to persist and when to pivot? I mean, sometimes it's hard to tell if you're just facing a temporary setback
Right.
or if it's a sign to move on. Any advice on how to make that call?
One strategy is to set clear criteria for yourself up front.
Okay.
What are your non-negotiables? What are you willing to compromise on?
Yeah.
And most importantly, what are your deal breakers? Having those boundaries in place can help you make more objective decisions.
So it's like having an exit strategy, not because you're expecting to fail, but because you're being realistic about the possibility.
Exactly. It's about being strategic, not just emotionally driven.
All right. So we've talked about routine, active learning, having a vision, cultivating resilience, and even embracing risk and failure.
Uh-huh.
But there's one crucial element that ties all of this together: time.
And the video kept coming back to that phrase, time is money. But they went deeper than the typical interpretation.
Right. It wasn't just about working harder. It was about working smarter,
Exact.
optimizing your time and energy.
It's about treating your time as a valuable resource,
Yeah.
not something to be wasted.
Right.
It's about learning to say no to things that don't align with your goals
Yeah.
and investing your time in activities that move you closer to your vision.
They talked about how rich people buy time, by delegating tasks, automating processes, and focusing on high-impact activities. It's
Yeah.
like they're maximizing their output by minimizing their input.
It's about understanding the value of leverage,
Yeah,
of finding ways to multiply your efforts
right.
without necessarily working more hours.
So it's not about being busy, it's about being productive.
Exactly.
It's about choosing how to spend your time
Right.
rather than letting time choose for you.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with your time and energy.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Routine, active learning, vision, resilience, risk, failure, and time management. But there's one final piece of the puzzle that I think is essential.
Yeah.
Passion.
Absolutely. The video was full of stories about people who found success by pursuing their passions, even when it meant defying expectations or taking unconventional paths.
And who better to illustrate that than Schwarzenegger himself?
Right.
He went from bodybuilding to acting to politics,
Uh,
all areas he was deeply passionate about. He didn't let societal norms or other people's expectations dictate his path.
Uh-huh.
He followed his heart, and that's what ultimately led him to success.
His story really highlights the powerful link between intrinsic motivation and long-term success. When you're genuinely passionate about something, you're more likely to persevere through challenges, to put in the extra effort, and to find joy in the journey,
Yeah.
regardless of the outcome.
It's like that saying, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But it's more than just enjoying your work. It's about finding that thing that lights you up, that gives you a sense of purpose and meaning.
It's about aligning your work with your values,
Uh-huh.
your interests, your talent. It's about finding that sweet spot where your passion meets your skills.
So let's bring this back to you. What are you passionate about?
Mm-hmm.
And how can you align your work or daily activities with your core values?
Yeah.
It's not about finding the perfect job or hobby.
Right.
It's about finding ways to infuse your life with more meaning and purpose.
And it's not just about grand ambitions or career aspirations.
Okay.
It can be about finding ways to bring more passion into your everyday life, whether it's through your relationships, your hobbies,
Yeah.
or simply the way you approach your daily tasks.
So it seems like the recipe for high achievement isn't just about talent or luck.
Mhm.
It's about cultivating a mindset geared towards growth,
Mm-hmm.
resilience, and taking purposeful action.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's not just about reaching some external marker of success. It's about the journey itself. It's about becoming the best version of yourself
Yeah.
and making a meaningful contribution to the world, whatever that looks like for you.
That's a great point. It's not about comparing yourself to others. It's about setting your own definition of success and then going after it with everything you've got.
And that leads us to a really interesting question.
Okay, what's that?
Does the pursuit of achievement have a darker side?
Oh.
Can these same traits, taken too far, lead to burnout or
Hmm.
even obsession?
Whoa. That's a really thought-provoking question. I mean, we've been talking about all these positive aspects of high achievement.
Yeah.
But you're right, there's always a flip side to any coin.
It's something to consider as we continue exploring this topic, because ultimately it's not about achieving success at all costs. It's about finding a balance that allows you to thrive, both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot where ambition fuels your growth without consuming your life.
Yeah.
So as we move into our next segment, let's keep that question in mind. Can these traits of high achievers be taken too far? And if so, how do we find that balance?
I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into that.
You too.
So we've been unpacking these habits of high achievers, but it makes you wonder, can these same traits, if taken too far, become detrimental?
It's like anything else, right? Too much of a good thing can be bad. We were just talking about passion, and
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely see how that could tip over into obsession
Yeah.
if you're not careful. I mean, I know I've definitely fallen into the trap of working myself to the bone, thinking that, more hours equals more success.
It's easy to get caught up in that hustle mentality, especially in today's always-on culture.
Yeah,
But it's important to remember that sustainable success requires balance.
right.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
So true. And this is where that idea of time is money gets tricky. Because if you're constantly focused on maximizing your output, it's easy to neglect your own well-being.
The video touched on the importance of delegation and automation,
Yeah.
but I think it's also about being mindful of how you spend your time outside of work.
Okay.
Are you engaging in activities that recharge you, that bring you joy, that allow you to disconnect and de-stress?
I think that's something a lot of people struggle with, myself included.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel guilty about taking time for yourself, especially when you have a million things on your to-do list.
That's where boundaries come in. High achievers tend to be very good at setting boundaries, both in their work and personal lives.
Right.
They know when to say no to protect their time and energy.
I actually read a book recently about the power of saying no. It was really eye-opening.
Oh, interesting.
The author argued that every time you say yes to something, you're implicitly saying no to something else.
That's a good point.
So it's about being conscious of your choices
Yeah.
and making sure you're saying yes to the things that truly matter.
That's a great way to put it. It's about being selective with your commitments so you can give your best to the things that align with your values and goals. And it's okay to say no to things that don't serve you, even if it means disappointing someone else.
Okay, so we've got boundaries as a key ingredient for sustainable success.
Yeah.
But what about that other side of the coin we were talking about, the potential pitfalls of these high achiever traits?
One thing that comes to mind is the risk of perfectionism. Now, striving for excellence is obviously a good thing,
Of course.
but it can become problematic when it turns into an all-consuming pursuit of flawlessness.
I can definitely see how that could happen. If you're always focused on doing everything perfectly, it's easy to get paralyzed by fear of failure.
Absolutely.
And it can also lead to procrastination because you're so afraid of not getting it right that you never even start.
Exactly. And perfectionism can also lead to burnout
Right.
because you're never satisfied with your accomplishment. There's always something else to improve, another goal to achieve. It's a never-ending cycle.
So how do you find that balance between striving for excellence and not letting perfectionism sabotage your efforts?
I think it's about reframing your definition of success. It's not about being perfect. It's about doing your best, learning from your mistakes, and constantly growing.
It's like that growth mindset we were talking about earlier, embracing challenges as opportunities for learning rather than threats to your ego.
Exactly. And it's also about celebrating your accomplishments along the way, even the small ones. Don't wait until you reach some arbitrary finish line to acknowledge your progress.
That's so important. It's easy to get caught up in the destination and forget to enjoy the journey. And speaking of the journey, we were talking about the potential downsides of passion. How can you tell if your passion is starting to cross that line into obsession?
That's a great question. And I think it's something everyone has to figure out for themselves. But some red flags might be neglecting your physical or mental health, withdrawing from social connections, or feeling constantly stressed and overwhelmed.
I think it's also important to check in with your values. Is your passion aligned with what you truly care about?
Right.
Or has it become something that's controlling your life?
That's a really insightful point because ultimately, true passion should enhance your life, not detract from it.
It should bring you joy, not just pressure and anxiety.
Exactly. And I think another potential pitfall of high achiever traits is the risk of comparison.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to others, especially in today's social media-driven world.
It's like everyone's highlight reel is constantly in your face, making you feel like you're not doing enough,
Uh-huh.
you're not successful enough, you're not good enough.
And that can be incredibly demotivating. It's important to remember that everyone's journey is unique.
Right.
And there's no one-size-fits-all definition of success.
Yeah.
What matters is that you're pursuing your own goals on your own terms.
So how do you stay focused on your own path, especially when you're constantly bombarded with images of other people's success?
One strategy is to be mindful of your social media consumption.
Okay.
Are the accounts you're following inspiring you
Yeah.
or making you feel inadequate?
Right.
It might be time to do a little decluttering and
Yeah.
curate your feed so that it supports your goals and values.
That's a great tip. It's like creating a positive and supportive environment for your mind, just like you would for your physical space.
Exactly. And I think it's also important to cultivate gratitude.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of focusing on what you lack, take time to appreciate all the good things in your life, both big and small.
It's like that saying, comparison is the thief of joy. When you're focused on what you don't have, you miss out on all the amazing things that are right in front of you.
So as we wrap up this segment on the potential downsides of high achiever traits, I think it's important to remember that these qualities can be incredibly powerful when used in a balanced and healthy way.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot where ambition fuels your growth without consuming your life.
It's about being mindful of your own well-being,
Yeah.
setting boundaries,
Uh-huh.
and staying true to your own values and goals.
And it's about recognizing that the journey to success is not a straight line.
Right.
It's full of twists and turns, setbacks and triumphs.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the whole experience, the good, the bad, and the messy, and using it all as fuel for growth.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we move into our final segment, let's shift gears a bit and talk about how these insights can be applied in a practical way.
Okay.
We've talked about the mindset of high achievers, but how can we actually translate these principles into action?
That's a great question, and I think it's something everyone can benefit from, regardless of their current level of achievement.
Right. It's not about becoming the next Arnold Schwarzenegger or Elon Musk.
Yeah.
It's about applying these principles to whatever goals you're pursuing, whether it's in your career, your relationships, your personal growth,
Yeah.
or anything else that matters to you.
Exactly. And I think one of the most powerful things you can do is to simply start.
Okay.
Take that first step, no matter how small it may seem.
I love that. It's about turning those big, audacious goals into manageable actions. It's about breaking down that overwhelming to-do list into bite-sized pieces.
And it's about celebrating those small wins along the way.
Yeah.
Because momentum breeds momentum.
Right.
The more you achieve, the more confident and motivated you'll become.
All right, so we've got to start somewhere, but where do we begin?
Yeah.
What's a practical first step that anyone can take, no matter what their goals are?
I think a great place to start is with that concept of active learning.
Okay.
What's one skill or area of knowledge that you've always wanted to learn more about? Maybe it's a new language, a musical instrument, a coding language, or even just a new topic that piques your interest.
I love that. It's about feeding your curiosity, expanding your horizons, and constantly challenging yourself to grow.
And it doesn't have to be a huge time commitment. You can start with just 15 minutes a day.
Okay.
Reading an article, watching a video, or listening to a podcast.
Right.
The key is consistency.
And the beauty of it is that there are so many resources available these days, many of them free.
Exactly.
There's literally a world of knowledge at your fingertips.
Exactly. So what's one thing you're going to commit to learning this week?
Ooh,
What's one small step you can take towards expanding your knowledge and skills?
that's a great question to ponder. And while you're thinking about that, let's talk about another practical application of these high achiever principles,
Okay.
building effective routines.
We touched on this earlier.
We did?
But it's worth emphasizing again because routines can be such a powerful tool for productivity, focus, and overall well-being.
I know I struggle with routines, but I can definitely see how they could make a big difference in my life.
One of the biggest benefits of routines is that they help to automate your decisions.
Okay.
So you're not constantly wasting mental energy on things like what to eat, what to wear, or when to exercise.
It's like creating a default mode for your day,
Yeah,
so you can free up your brain power for more important tasks.
exactly. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Start by identifying a few key areas of your life where a routine could be beneficial.
Okay.
Maybe it's your morning routine, your bedtime routine, or your workout routine.
And remember, it's about finding what works for you.
Mm.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. Experiment with different strategies and adjust as needed.
Uh-huh.
The key is to find a rhythm that feels natural and sustainable.
So what's one small change you can make to your routine this week? Maybe it's adding a 10-minute walk to your morning routine or setting a specific time to check email so you're not constantly distracted throughout the day.
It's about making small, incremental changes that add up over time. And remember, the goal is not to become a robot.
Right.
It's to create a framework that supports your goals and helps you to live a more fulfilling and productive life.
That's a great way to put it. It's about using routines as a tool, not letting them become a prison.
Exactly. And speaking of tools, let's talk about one of the most valuable resources we have: time.
We touched on this earlier, but it's worth diving deeper into the practical aspects of time management, especially in the context of high achievers, because they seem to have this uncanny ability to get so much done in the same 24 hours that we all have.
It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter.
Right.
It's about being intentional with your time and making conscious choices about how you spend it.
The video talked about how rich people buy time by delegating tasks, automating processes, and focusing on high-impact activities. But how can those of us who aren't millionaires apply those principles?
One strategy is to identify your most valuable activities, the things that make the biggest difference in your life and work.
Okay.
And then focus your time and energy on those things, delegating or eliminating anything that isn't essential.
It's about prioritizing your tasks and making sure you're spending your time on the things that truly move the needle.
Exactly. And it's also about being ruthless with your time. Learn to say no to distractions, interruptions, and requests that don't align with your goals.
That's so much easier said than done, though.
I know.
I'm a total people pleaser, and I hate saying no to people.
I understand that. But remember, every time you say yes to something, you're implicitly saying no to something else.
Right.
So it's about choosing wisely and making sure you're prioritizing the things that truly matter.
That's a great reminder.
Hmm?
So as we wrap up this segment on time management, what's one small change you can make this week to be more intentional with your time? Maybe it's setting aside a specific time block for focused work, or maybe it's creating a system for delegating tasks that don't require your personal attention.
It's about finding what works for you and making small incremental changes that add up over time. And remember, time management is not about becoming a slave to your schedule. It's about creating a framework that supports your goals and helps you to live a more fulfilling and productive life.
That's a great way to put it. It's about using time as a tool, not letting it control you.
Exactly. And I think that brings us to our final point, which is about the importance of vision and goal setting.
We touched on this earlier,
I did.
but it's worth revisiting in the context of practical application. Because it's one thing to have a dream, but it's another thing entirely to make it a reality.
The video emphasized the importance of having a clear vision,
Yes.
knowing where you want to go. It's not just about wanting to be successful. It's about having a specific destination in mind. And it's about setting goals that give that vision structure and direction.
So it's like having a roadmap, and those goals are the milestones along the way. But I've always struggled with goal setting. I
Right.
get overwhelmed, I start procrastinating. Any tips on making it less daunting?
One thing that helps is to break down big, overwhelming goals into smaller, more manageable steps,
Okay.
and then focus on taking action one step at a time.
It's like eating an elephant one bite at a time.
Exactly. And it's important to make your goals specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, or SMART goals, as they're often called.
I've heard of SMART goals, but I've never really understood how to put them into practice. Can you give us an example?
Sure, let's say your goal is to write a book. Instead of just saying, I want to write a book, you could break it down into smaller, more specific goals, such as write for 30 minutes every day for the next month.
Okay.
Complete a first draft of the manuscript within 6 months. Find an editor and get feedback on the manuscript within 9 months. Submit the manuscript to at least 5 publishers within a year.
That's so much more manageable than just staring at a blank page and feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of the task.
Exactly. And by breaking it down into smaller steps, you're also creating a sense of momentum and progress, which can be incredibly motivating.
So as we wrap up this segment on vision and goal setting, what's one small step you can take this week to bring your goals into clearer focus?
Yeah.
Maybe it's simply writing down your goals or breaking down a big goal into smaller steps.
It's about taking action, no matter how small it may seem.
Yeah,
Because even the smallest step can be a giant leap towards achieving your dreams.
that's a great way to put it, and I think it's a perfect note to end on. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from the mindset of high achievers to the practical applications of these principles, but ultimately it all comes down to taking action one step at a time.
And remembering that the journey is just as important as the destination.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this episode, we'd love to hear what resonated with you. What's one action you'll take this week inspired by this deep dive?
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing those boundaries.
And remember, the world is your library. Go out there and earn some knowledge.
Yeah.
So we've explored a lot, right? The high achiever mindset, potential downsides, even got practical with some tips. Before we wrap up this whole deep dive, what's been standing out to you? What's really resonating?
You know what's striking me is how interconnected all these elements are. It's not enough to just have a clear vision or be a master of time management.
Right.
It's about weaving all these threads together.
Yeah.
The routine, active learning, resilience, the passion to create a tapestry of success.
I like it.
That's both fulfilling and sustainable.
It's like a recipe, right? You need the right ingredients in the right proportions.
Yeah.
Speaking of recipes, the video did provide sort of a framework for success, but it focused on individuals, like at the top of their fields.
Yeah.
Does this even apply to, well, everyone else?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is a resounding yes.
Okay.
These principles, they're universal.
Yeah.
They apply to achieving any goal, big or small. Whether you're aiming for a promotion, writing a novel, or simply trying to learn a new skill, it all comes down to cultivating the right mindset
Right.
and taking consistent action.
So it's not about comparing yourself to others or trying to achieve some arbitrary definition of success.
Right.
It's about defining what success means for you.
Yes.